Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Disc Connected. I'm here with Ewan, Cant, and you are in charge of, or I guess the specific title we should go with is Assistant Director to Acquisitions and Content Production. That was pretty close. I'm sure I messed that up somehow. Thank you for
Yeah, that
doing
was
this.
close enough. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I've been eagerly awaiting this since I spoke to someone else that knew you, and I'm very, very excited to get to somebody that works on a lot of the behind the scenes stuff on Vinegar Syndrome. I've had Justin on a couple times, but uh, the discs are really where he's at, and Justin's kind of the face of everything lately, and I want to see how we get the meat ground down basically, and it seems like you are the perfect person to do this. So I'm stoked. Can you share in a nutshell what you do at Vinegar Syndrome so that we can get a broad trajectory for the rest of this?
Yeah, very simply, I work in acquiring titles for us and producing the bonus content. So all the making ofs, or not all the, but a lot of the making ofs and interviews and commentaries and all that kind of good stuff.
All the stuff that I seem to appreciate the most. So first off,
hmm
thank you. I'm sure in your position, not a lot of people get the opportunity to tell you thank you. The work that you do makes up a lot of the joy in my life. So I just want to say thank you first.
Well, as you can see from the shelves behind me, I'm as much curating my own Blu-ray shelf as I am others. So it's
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, with your time at Vinegar Syndrome, are there some titles that you've worked on that you are most proud of so far?
So I've been at Vinegar Syndrome for just over a year, so still hopefully the best work to come. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, if, just to pick out some highlights, I guess the first disc that I produced was the 1984 Santa slasher Don't Open Till Christmas. And that being shot in London, which is where I am, which is my hometown. I'm a big fan of location pieces and film locations, and so that was. If anyone has not checked out that disc, we had a lot of fun uh, doing a locations piece for that in London, and it was it was one of those opportunities. There was a lot of kind of fairly recognizable locations, so and they were all quite close together. So we had a
Nice.
fun day running around the back streets of Soho in central London, recreating shots and doing stupid, goofy skits. Um, I actually we did we did a little skit. For those of you who haven't seen the film, there's a scene where the killer jumps out with this kind of cutthroat razor, and I actually borrowed a cutthroat razor off my barber. um, who was I should have given her credit for that, but yeah, so that's the kind of fun we have behind the scenes. So that
That's
was a really
exciting.
fun one. I also got to do a commentary for that with my good friend Amanda Reyes, and so that was really fun. Like I've only done, I think that was maybe my third commentary.
Oh wow.
I kind of only really sort of step into the commentary fray when there's something that I really feel kind of really passionate about and kind of like
Right.
well placed. I don't want to insert myself in something where I don't feel like I have like a particular perspective or passion for that film.
Right.
So for that one, we did a commentary, and there was just so much about that film. It was really troubled production, and was dragged out over a couple of years. And so there's lots of interesting people behind the scenes. So there was just so much. We almost, didn't have enough time. We actually ended up doing kind of a podcast episode together about it because we just had so much background. And there's so many
Nice.
like fascinating people involved. And also, for me, like a lot of kind of names from like British TV were involved. So that was really interesting for me. Um, and hopefully for other people. So
And
yeah,
of
that
course,
that was
Amanda, since she hits the TV stuff hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I've actually that was actually my third commentary and third with Amanda actually. So we did commentaries
Wow.
for when I was at Arrow for our releases of the Prey and Phantom of the Mall.
Nice.
So yeah, Don't Open Till Christmas was like my maiden voyage with Vinegar Syndrome. So that's that looms pretty large. Yeah, and there's well, today we've I think it was today we unveiled the long-awaited Fatal Games
Yep.
Blu-ray. So that's still work in progress, but that's I mean, as that for me, that is kind of one of my ultimate slasher holy grails. I've been lucky enough to, or you know, to be involved in re-releasing a lot of my kind of slasher movie holy grails, and I think, yeah, and Fatal Games for me was a huge one, and I think for a lot of other people as well. So that's still ongoing, but yeah, that's been a really, yeah, I mean that's just complete bucket list material for me.
Well, and Don't
um
Open Till Christmas, the whole holiday horror genre, for
yeah,
those that love slashers, that seems to be one that looms large. That's one that people have wanted in high def for a long time. That wasn't the old, I think it was a Spanish bootleg that got passed around for years. And to finally get that like in this beautiful package with tons of extras, that had to be just amazing to finally see that and have people respond to it.
yeah, I don't if you got the slip case. I don't know if you saw we all signed the
Yeah.
inside of it, so that was kind of that was a fun idea. I take no credit for any of the packaging. So I can say that without any vested interest, but I thought that was really fun. But yeah, I mean, I love holiday horror. I love Christmas slashers. I think I probably watch more horror. People do like 31 days of Halloween and stuff. I think I
Yeah.
probably watch way more horror around Christmas just because it's always been that time when I've had
Yeah.
a bit more downtime and just found myself able to kind of watch through like the stack of Blu-rays that I've got. So I always really associate Christmas with horror. I don't know
Nice.
what that says about me, but
I'd say it's pretty normal, especially a
yeah,
lot of us. You're on holiday around then. That's the best time
yeah,
to sit up,
yeah,
put
yeah,
your feet up
yeah,
and relax with a triple feature or something. That's a lot of fun.
absolutely. Yeah. Why stop at three?
So, well, that's true. Fatal Games is coming out. That's a big one, and we are putting this out right after the October titles were announced. Do you want to break
Yep.
down some of those?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, this won't be breaking news. I mean, it is breaking news to you right now,
Right.
but it won't be when this goes out. But so I've been working on Mother's Day. So
Amazing.
that's the World UHD premiere, which, for those who don't know, it's Charles Kaufman's 1980 trauma, kind of slightly, preempted. It's kind of like very early in the slasher wave. Was actually filming around the same time as Friday the 13th on the other side of the lake.
Yep.
So that's something that we delve into in the extras. Yeah, it was just one of those titles where sometimes you can really struggle to get people involved. I've had some releases where it's like trying to get blood from a stone to for whatever reason, whether there's
Right.
people are no longer with us or they didn't have great experiences. But Mother's Day, we just, just got a ton of interviews, and a very fun location piece, which I was not involved in, but I was happy enough to be able to produce and sort of oversee from a distance. So that's really cool. That's really
It's a
fun.
wonderful movie, and if
Yeah,
somebody out there has never seen it, this is one of those that is like seminal film. You absolutely have to see Mother's Day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that's really exciting. What else have we got? Another Troma title, Rabid Grannies, which is it's the Blu-ray premiere of the kind of uncut version, because the
Nice.
film's had um, pretty checkered history in terms of its release. First kind of being quite heavily cut when it came out in the US, and then
Right.
in subsequent years has been released in kind of various different iterations. None of them, sometimes with the gore, but never like with some of the quote unquote padding cut out, which I
Right.
enjoy all the ridiculous character stuff. Yeah, and that was a real joy for me. I mean, Rabbit Grannies, again another Troma title. Well, not Troma produced, but it's a Belgian. It's a real curio. It's a Belgian film that was shot with kind of like Belgian French actors in English, but then dubbed, because I think they were all kind of speaking kind of phonetic. A lot of them didn't actually speak English, so they were having to learn their lines kind of phonetically.
Right.
And then so speaking English, but then dubbed again in English, which just creates this really strange vibe to it. And all these very like kind of there's quite a lot of it's sort of supposed to be this kind of aristocratic kind of family, and so they're all dubbed in these kind of regional kind of British accents, which kind of makes it kind of curious for me as well.
Right.
Um, but essentially, for those that don't know, it's these two sweet old ladies who inhabit this huge mansion out in the countryside, and they're having their uh, weekend birthday party, weekend sort of birthday get together, and all their relatives who are these collection of kind of obnoxious freeloaders all trying to get in on the lady's wealth. They all descend on the country mansion for the birthday weekend, and a mysterious package arrives for the old ladies, which turns out to be this kind of sort of this box, this sort of engraved box, which, when opened, transforms the old ladies into these ghoulish hags, who then set about tearing their relatives limb from limb. And yeah, once it gets going, it's just completely ridiculous, wall to wall gore. And luckily, we've put all of that stuff back in, so people will be able
Good.
to see it, for the first time in all its glory. So that was a really exciting one for me to be able to work on, and we were lucky enough to be able to license a documentary about Belgian horror, a feature-length documentary called Forgotten Scares,
Oh wow,
which
interesting.
so that features quite heavily Rabbit Grannies, and also the producer, whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce because it's Belgian and Flemish, and I'm just going to completely make a meal out of it. But it covers his career quite a lot as well, and he started
Interesting.
out directing Lucker, which is the kind of necrophiliac serial killer
Yeah.
movie. And he had quite a has quite a prolific career, so it sort of goes into a lot of his history, and then a lot of curious Belgian horror movies that I'd never heard of, and
Awesome.
so that's really cool, substantial extra. We've got a commentary with the guys at the Hysteria Continues, which is kind of one of my go-to podcasts. I've been a guest on that a couple of times, and yeah, a few interviews with some of the crew. So that's very
Nice.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's my head is sort of in November now, so it's
I
we're
get it.
sort of um, uh, and then sort of to finish off our kind of Troma trilogy for October, we've got Blood Sucking Freaks, which is the
Oh
Joel M.
wow.
Reed, extremely sleazy, kind of nasty little movie, in all the right ways,
Yeah.
about this kind of this torture show, which turns out to be kind of in the Wizard of Gore kind of vein. Turns out to be real life maimings. So that's yeah. So that's what October's been looking like for me anyway. So
That sounds very trauma heavy, and people I
yeah,
guarantee are going to be ecstatic about at
yeah,
least two or three of those.
hmm
Uh, God, the Bloodsucking Freaks has been released a couple times, but I imagine this is going to be the definitive release of it. And Mother's Day, that's one of those ones that it basically laid the foundation for trauma. So I'm really stoked that a lot of people will
yeah.
have just this great catch up release and be able to dive into the entire catalog. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, obviously, Vinegar Syndrome have, a storied kind of relationship with Troma. So it's really been
Yeah.
nice for me to be able to come in and to be able to work on some of those titles. The one I was forgetting, last but not least, is we've got the world UHD premiere of Mark of the Devil.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's coming in October as well. And that was a really interesting one to work on as well. I was able to interview the director Michael Armstrong, who's based in London. So we had a nice afternoon. Had a really in-depth interview with him about the making of the movie, which is a really interesting story.
Nice.
Um, and New interview with Udo Kier. So
Great.
we were really happy to make that happen. And yeah, it's absolutely stacked with new and archival extras.
I love how willing Udo always is to speak on some of these older films, because a
Yeah,
lot of people in his situation would just be like, "Nah, that's behind me. I'm good."
yeah, yeah, yeah. You never really know when approaching people. I think the thing with Mark of the Devil is it is the film that kind of established him like on the
Right.
international scene. So I think, yeah, he was when I reached out, he was kind of instantly kind of keen to talk about it, which was nice because yeah, you never kind of know when you're approaching people how they're going to feel, and sometimes you can be surprised.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so that was really nice.
Well, you just brought up Wizards of Gore, and you've name dropped Arrow a
Yeah.
couple times. Can we talk about some of the things that you did at Arrow Video?
We can, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Uh, so, Herschel Gordon Lewis, supposedly you had something big in that, right?
Yeah, that was yeah, I mean my kind of thing there. I mean, I produced the entire release. And yeah, pretty much kind of everything aside from the restorations on that was kind of for better or for worse, came from me. From kind of we knew that we wanted to do something really big and different with it. I don't know if you've
Right.
seen the kind of the big. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I don't even have it. I don't even have it on my. I think it's in my attic. It's like it doesn't. I mean, it was the debate we were having when we put it together. Like, how are you gonna, how's it gonna fit on people's shelves?
It's so big.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I really wanted to do with that, what we should have done when we were promoting it, I wanted to do like I say I wanted to. It never really got that far, apart from just an idea in my head. But we should have done one of these like PSA, like workplace safety videos, but with like the box and like someone moving a shelf and it falling down and like braining the person, and having their kind of like brains spill out
Yeah.
like H.G. Lewis style, that kind of thing, or poking someone's eye out or something like that. So that was a bit of a missed trick, but yeah, I mean, what that yeah, I mean, I remember the whole kind of development process and kind of working with the company that sort of made the packaging, but we were getting all sorts of different types of eyeball, coming into the office to
Right.
look at and kind of see like, is this, what see what the quality of these eyeballs were like, and I had a prototype one that was not the one we ended up using, but I had it on my desk that I used to enjoy spinning around over my head whenever a song I approved of came on the radio. It was my kind of trademark of spinning this eyeball around.
Nice.
The one that you get in the one that actually ended up being in the thing you can't spin around, sadly, but you can have the image of me doing that. It's more posable, if I remember. The optic nerve on it is
Yep.
kind of a bit posable. Um, and yeah, I guess one that I mean, I got really carried away with that one. We did like I sort of came up with the idea of I used to get these um, you get like kind of end of year annuals of like
Yeah.
comic books and things like that, like activity books, and I kind of wanted to create that, but with H.G. Lewis themed content. I don't kind of know why how I came up with that, but yeah, I mean, we had like I think we had like a Escape from the 2000 Maniacs kind of maze.
Yeah.
like concept came up with all these things and like how to make a doll, like cut out dolls, and yeah, we had a lot of fun with that.
There was the
Um,
cutout paper mask that you could do on the back of it. There
yeah,
was
oh, yeah, yeah. Well, that was supposed to trigger people a bit because that was
yep,
actually the hard cover. So presumably, oh no, that was the back. Sorry, that was the back of the cereal box one. Yeah, that was it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we
That
did the huge box, and then we did the kind of the smaller but still limited edition like cereal box. And again, I sort of came up with that idea one day, and then got the artists to come up. Had the idea of Herschel digging into a big bowl of guts, and called it the Herschel Gordon Lewis feast, I guess. Yeah, yeah. So that was a lot of fun.
what was Herschel big for you growing up, or was this something that you discovered as an adult and really just put all that passion into the box? Because again, not a lot of people would get the opportunity to design not one but two massive releases for something like this, and
Yeah.
they're both kind of legends in like the modern Blu-ray scene because they're so incredible. Like they're two of the best all together packages ever made.
Wow, that's I mean that's praise indeed. But yeah, yeah. I mean, H.G. Lewis it wasn't kind of. I mean, they were available here in the UK. Some of the kind of key ones, but
Right.
maybe not some of the deeper cuts. I definitely didn't come to H.G. Lewis till a bit later, maybe mid late teens, maybe. I was a horror watching veteran by that point, but yeah, I think like I started kind of with the hits, like 2000 Maniacs,
Yeah.
Wizard of Gore, that kind of stuff. I think I picked up on DVD probably, yeah, probably towards my late teens, I think. So they weren't kind of my go-tos, but I definitely developed an appreciation for them. Um, and then certainly when you're working on something like that, you really like throw yourself mentally into the whole world.
Oh yeah.
And I even kind of have a soft spot for like Taste of Blood, like his 2 hour vampire slash kind of indoor golfing opus. um I kind of you kind of come to appreciate some of the kind of the deliberate kind of soporific pacing of some of
Right.
these things in a way. It's sort of, and the kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, the kind of little musical theme that kind of plays over and over, that kind of sort of lulls you into a bit of a trance, which is
Definitely.
not an unpleasant trance.
H.G. Lewis. I mean,
Yeah.
I came to him even later than you, but the box set itself, it was the first time that I saw probably half the titles. And I'm just curious from a producing standpoint, do you think about as you're approaching this that like an entire generation is going to have their feeling towards this fundamental character in horror shaped by you, and not to make that feel like a whole lot of pressure. I'm just curious, when you're doing that, do you feel that sort of like, I really hope the world gets this and I can help somebody discover when they're 17 like I did HG Lewis?
Mm. Um, I don't. I don't think I've thought about it quite that in depth. I mean, definitely when one of the things that that really gets me excited is kind of bringing something to like Blu-ray or even UHD, um, that's kind of been AWOL since VHS, and being able to kind of be in that position where you're kind of for the first time kind of telling the story of that movie. Definitely then, like I'm thinking in terms of we're sort of able to kind of be a part of like that film's legacy. I
Right.
remember, for the Prey, which we released at Arrow, I remember pre-working on it. The Wikipedia being like a couple of lines, and then
Yeah.
coming back to it kind of a couple of years after we did the release, and it had like ballooned to this like massive, not maybe not massive, but and all the references were like stuff to do with the release and things. And that was, yeah, that's
Right.
very gratifying to be able to um have a small part in the legacy of a film, that you admire and love. So I've not really thought about it in terms of, yeah, I mean, I do think in terms of this is, we're we're sort of creating the opportunity for people to discover these films again, for sure. Um, yeah. So
That release of the Prey was really well done, and I uh kind of a moment of interesting coincidence, I guess, is I was at Texas Frightmare weekend. I think it was 2019 that they did the interviews, and they had the big Arrow Q&A that ended up on the disc on that one, and
yeah,
it was so neat to see so many people walk by, have no clue what this film was, and then later that year go, oh my god, this has come out, now I get to discover this and see these people that I walked by. It was just such a great time, that the seeing the actors get their due and get something that had literally been forgotten about for decades. It was just wonderful to see from afar.
yeah. That was I mean, yeah, and I was at Arrow during that time, obviously, and yeah, I think that. So I went Texas Frightmare 2018 and 2019 that year, and I think they must have asked. Arrow was sponsoring, and I think they must have asked, what kind of restoration we could kind of premiere there, and
Right.
somehow I managed to get the Prey in there, and then I suggested that we got um, Laurie Lethine, uh, Jackson Bostwick, and Carl Strucken, who plays the monster in the film, because I thought they would all be like a good proposition for convention, because they
Yeah.
all kind of had you know you know credits, big resumes of other films that I think people would be excited to see them at the
Yeah.
convention, and yeah, somehow we sort of made it happen. And I remember it was pretty much like a packed out screening, and I remember because we did introing it and stuff, and I was kind of worried after that. Over. I mean, I have so much love for that film, which if that's not evident, then I've not done my job. But um, it was kind of mad to like, and I'm sure plenty of people kind of uh, were kind of a little bit bemused by it, and its kind of proliferation of nature footage and stuff. I mean, I think that all
Right.
adds to the charm, but I'm sure a lot of people felt a bit blindsided by it. Maybe I don't know. No one's. I mean, everyone seemed to have a really good time, and we recorded the kind of audio of the screening for posterity, and that's on the disc. But yeah, that was probably one of, if not kind of my highlights in my career, is presenting the Prey to a packed out screening. It was just like, it was really, it was pretty unreal.
Other than the Prey and H.G. Lewis,
Mm.
were there some other major releases from Arrow that you put out that you'd like to shed some light on?
Yeah, I mean that's fairly easy for me, because I did, when I left Arrow kind of last year, I kind of did a bit of a, just like on social, just kind of a top 10 of some of my favorite projects. So Prey was definitely up there. The Mutilator was a huge
That
one
was a
for
great
me.
release.
That was the first time that I went to the States, was to go to North Carolina to stay at the
Wow.
Oceanana where it was shot. Yeah, because I think I'd been at Arrow, so that was like 2015, I think, and I'd been at Arrow for a couple
Yeah.
of years, and we that was maybe my second acquisition. So again, that was quite a special
Oh.
one for me, that I was able to, because I'd been waiting for that Blu-ray to come out for years.
Yeah.
I've been collecting horror movies since I was. I mean, I remember, yeah, probably about seven or eight, kind of, sort of fairly properly, and that was one that I, before getting into into distribution, it was one that I was checking up on, see when it was, what was when I started kind of getting more into like deeper dive slasher movie fare, and was kind of like wondering when it was going. I was following talk, conversations online about when it was going to come out, and then eventually I was in a position where I was like, oh, I can actually make this happen, and
Right.
was able to get in touch with the director buddy, and yeah, and away we went. But we were setting up the interviews and stuff, and then I was like, well, why couldn't I just go to the US and actually do it? And then so that was my reason for coming to the US for the first time, was to go to North Carolina to stay at the motel and shoot the what turned out to be a documentary.
That's
So
awesome.
obviously that was extremely, special for me, and staying at the motel where it was all shot, swimming in the pool where the pool scene was. And then, as a nice kind of footnote to that, last year, you can't see it, but I've got it on top of my shelves there. Um, is a signed, kind of banner for the Mutilator 2. And
Nice.
so last uh, was it April, May? Yeah, I went back to North Carolina and mooched around on the set of Mutilated 2, and so I'm an extra in. Can't really reveal much, but there's a party scene that I'm an extra in twice. I'm in fancy dress in some of it, and then as myself for some of it. So
Nice.
that's really exciting that's finally happened. Buddy was talking about it when we did the documentary, and it was really nice to be able to go back and see that happen and be part of it. Um,
Wow.
so that was a huge one. That's one of the ones that, like, I see on my shelf and I take it out and I'm like, I'm just, like, I'm so happy to have been able to, yeah, I'm just so,
Right.
like, pleased with it, and how, that that was able to do that.
And there's
Um,
part of you in it, it sounds like. It sounds like, especially because it was your first time coming to the US, that was a
yeah,
foundational time for your future there.
yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think Blood Rage was my first acquisition, but Mutilator, was, yeah, exactly, yeah. Going to the US for the first time, and I've been, like, back most years since then. Um, and yeah, it was just an incredible experience. Um, and then, probably, another big one for me. I mean, I mentioned Blood Rage. That was my first kind of
Yeah.
acquisition. So that was, and actually, we did interviews for Blood Rage during that same trip. So it was kind of
Oh,
tied in.
nice.
But Mutilator was more like, connecting with Buddy and kind of telling the story. It was
Right.
kind of more of a, uh, sort of being able to tell his story, and it was very much his kind of like passion project, whereas Blood Rage is more kind of different, uh, different kind of players involved. And
Yeah.
but that was really exciting to actually. That was the first time I actually kind of curated, like, put together a Blu-ray of something that I'd wanted to own it, and then was kind of able to make it happen. And yeah, hopefully, um, lots of people wanted to have it as well, which, yeah.
Well, and Blood Rage in the last, I don't, God, that had to have come out, what, 2015, 2016, the Blu-ray, somewhere around there? That's a pretty old one at this point.
Yeah, 2015, I think it was. Yeah, I think you're right.
So in the last 8 to 10 years, I'd easily say that's one of the more, like, the classic, quote, classic horror films that has come out, that's kind of permeated the zeitgeist way more than it used to be. Like, it was played on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, and so many people from that, but also from this Blu-ray release, have discovered this film for the first time. And now there's, every year you hear cranberry sauce jokes on Thanksgiving, and people sharing
Yeah,
this in November as a must watch every single time. And you find out the first time they watched it was 6 years ago when they got the Arrow
yeah,
Blu-ray in some sale, and that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that was. I mean, I discovered that one kind of fairly late as well. Um, but yeah, that was really special to be able to. Yeah, because there is, it's kind of like one of, like, two until we get Eli Roth's film. It's kind of one of two kind of Thanksgiving based slashers. So it was
Right.
always that kind of sort of like kind of untapped area of holiday horror. So that was it's got so many things going for it. It's got that, it's the cranberry sauce, the incredible gore,
Twins.
twins. Yeah, it's got
So
so many
fun.
things going for it. So it was really special to, and yeah, hopefully that helped a lot more people discover it. So
Absolutely.
um, and yeah, I mean the Slayer was another big one for me. Um,
Nice.
and I think that was my second trip to the US, to go to Georgia, to the house, the kind of the beach house where they filmed it. And yeah, I was able to connect with who's uh, who's now a good friend of mine, whose family owns the house. And so we went and did
Wow.
like a location piece, and we were able to do a screening of the film in the Tybee Post Theatre, which is on Tybee Island in Georgia. We had a screening of the Slayer, and they'd shot some of the scenes were shot in the theater when it was all kind of run down and very creepy looking, and it had been restored, and we were able to show the film there with lots of locals who were just really into the idea that 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 they could see this movie on the big screen that was shot in their on their in their town. And that was incredibly special experience
That's
as well.
awesome.
And that was one that I had the VHS off when I was pretty young, and it was kind of one of my go-tos. So that was really special to be able to work on as well.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. How did you start so young with some of the horror? Was that introduced to you in some fun and interesting way?
um yeah, I don't know. I think kind of like growing up and watching, um I sort of grew up, was born in '84, so I kind of grew up, mid late '80s, where kind of, um in the UK, we had quite a lot of, like kind of kids TV and stuff, was kind of permeated with this, with the kind of, there was a lot of like kids shows that had kind of supernatural angle to it. My dad was a TV director, and so in the '80s he did a number of, they were kind of like young adult, what you would say like young adult, I guess you'd call them tweens now,
Yeah.
like TV show, serialized TV shows. And they were, a lot of them were very horror adjacent. They were kind of like ghost stories, or kind of horror kind of elements. So I grew up watching a lot of that stuff,
Awesome.
a lot of the kind of the '80s, like Doctor Who. um yeah, and then I went to, my mum was also worked in TV as a set designer, so we would go to the BBC um center, and get to kind of look around some of the sets. And I remember going onto one of the sets of one of the '80s Doctor Who series, when I was about four, maybe, and seeing kind of like the monsters lair and the masks and stuff. And yeah, just got obsessed with that stuff really young. Used to watch like the Thriller music video obsessively. I remember being like viscerally like afraid of it, but also having that kind of, you want to see more, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably being able to kind of like, you know tape like Nightmare on Elm Street and Child's Play and things like that, kind of probably way too young.
Yeah.
But being able to do that, and then I think from a pretty early age, just like starting to collect videotapes, and then DVD, and then Blu-ray, and then here we are.
I think it's hilarious. I think you are I can't remember if it's second or third, but this is not the first time that somebody's brought up the Thriller music video as being something that is a clear like reference point in their mind of going, this scared the shit out of me, but it
Yeah,
was so amazing I couldn't stop watching it. And I
yeah,
don't know that we really have the opportunity for something like that to happen nowadays. Music
mm,
videos aren't as prolific as they are, and that one obviously, that one made like an impact. That one, I think they had like a making of that played with it for a long time afterwards. There, it was an
yeah.
extra long
Well,
feature.
I had like a double VHS, which had like the making of, and obviously it's like John Landis, and so
Yeah,
that kind of opened up that kind of stuff to me. Yeah.
that's awesome. I really hope someday soon, because I believe it just got released in 4K on iTunes here in the States. I hope somebody's doing some really interesting package, like putting that out on UHD with a documentary or something, because
Mm,
that's a real cultural touch point that deserves
mm,
something like that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, definitely for me, it was a real like watershed kind of moment. Um, and I think a friend, you know, down the road had it taped off Top of the Pops. It was like our, um, the music show growing up, and we would
Right,
just kind of watch it. I can still almost remember the live video that came before it of some other band that we just like what that's what we do. We just watch it over and over again.
right.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and so yeah, like kind of working my way through all the the kind of the big horror hitters, and then I think maybe around like 12 or 13, I got a copy of the Dark Side, which is a UK horror magazine, and they had it was one of like many issues they had on the video nasties, and that just opened up a whole new world for me. Having gone through all the Child's Play, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Streets, and
Yeah,
then suddenly there was this kind of, and that's the kind of the irony of the video nasties is that it was kind of basically created a shopping list for horror fans of like, all right, I've got to see all these films. I think it's 70 odd movies. That's the irony of it. Is it created people like me, because it was like here is a ready-made curated list of
yeah,
supposedly heinous horror that I need to check out. So I maybe got, yeah, it was like just a feature on the video nasties, and it was just like it was like the whole list of, I think it's 60 or 70 of them, and just like a little synopsis of each of them. So I'd be reading, and it just synopsis would just explain. It would just say, uh, you know, Joe the plumber has his eyes poked out. Various crumbling zombies are shot in the head.
right.
Like all this stuff, and you just obviously it just highlight those bits, and you'd be like, well, how do I see this? I've got to see this now. Um, but also that was like the mid to late 90s, where here in the UK we were still kind of in the wake of the video nasties. So a lot of these films were either still technically banned or available in heavily cut versions. Um, so again, it was like that kind of hunt. I've got to hunt them down.
Right.
I remember watching Zombie Flesh Eaters, or Zombie as you guys have it as, on a UK tape, and it kind of cutting right before the splinter goes into Olga Carletos's eye, and my dad being like, "Oh, they've cut something there," and I was like, "Really? What?" Like I didn't. That kind of awakened me to that kind of phenomenon of cutting stuff, and obviously when
Right.
stuff is cut, you want to see it even more, so you start going down that rabbit hole, and that kind of then made me kind of, I guess that turned me from being like, a pretty prolific consumer of horror into like an avid, collector wanting to track things down, and yeah, just kind of snowballed from there. And
Taking your
then
video nasties checklist with you everywhere.
yeah, pretty much, yeah, like we went on a few family trips to Amsterdam when I was kind of mid-teens maybe, and a lot that we discovered this one little store. I don't know if it's there anymore. I mean, it doesn't probably, it's kind of irrelevant now, but they had all the, it was, we went in and it was like literally like going into an Aladdin's cave, and it was just stacked shelves of VHS of like all these films, but like, you know like, Last House on the Left, that was completely banned at the time, so I'd never been able to see that. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was completely banned, and I got all of these on these kind of dupy looking Dutch subtitled tapes, and that's how I saw a lot of those films for the first time. And of course, that just kind of adds to, I have a lovely UHD release of Texas Chainsaw on my shelf here, but nothing kind of quite beats that initial
Right.
visceral experience of watching this kind of grubby looking VHS transfer with like Dutch subtitles burned into the screen. It just kind of makes it even more of a kind of illicit experience.
Yeah, especially
So
when you're at a time when you're told you're not allowed to watch this. And
yeah,
so the moment you track it down, it's not just finding treasure, it's finding treasure that you're not supposed to have. So it's
yeah,
so much more special.
yeah, yeah. And then I had that in kind of later years with like that was another um, kind of standout project. Arrow for me was the York Butger films, like
Yeah.
Necromantic 2. Again, I mean this was only I don't know when I saw those, maybe like 2008, 9, something like that. But again, those, most of the video nasties by that point had been re-released here, probably uncut by that point. But the necromantic films were still seemed completely forbidden, and I remember having to get
Right.
those off eBay, and again, like watching them at like 2 in the morning and just being like, wow, this is the most um, transgressive thing I've ever seen. Um, and yeah, so that was really special. Then being able to get those released for the first time in the UK, legally ever,
Yeah.
and those being passed uncut for the first time, and yeah, we got to release all of Jörg's 4 feature films and got to work really closely with him. So, and he's just such a lovely guy, kind of
Yeah.
contrary to the content of his movies. But yeah, I was really pleased to be able to reconnect with him when we did our the Vinegar Syndrome release of Killer Condom a couple of months ago. Well, we released it a couple of months ago, but Jorg did the special effects for that. So I was
Yeah.
really pleased to be able to kind of reconnect with him, and I went to Berlin to do the interviews for that. So that
Wow.
was really nice, kind of you know uh, cyclical kind of moment.
In the whole process of things, are you involved in getting it cleared to be released in the UK, like with the necromantic titles back then, or was that more of the heads at Arrow?
No, I mean, with Necromantic, I think there'd been like a festival screening or something, if I remember correctly. So we were kind of had been alerted to the fact that it had been shown. I think that was it. I think it was some sort of screening, and it had kind of been given a bit of a free pass, and then that kind of that alerted us to the fact that it would probably get through. Um, but there's kind of the only that, and then Necromantic 2, we had to submit that, and I was a bit concerned about that. Those are the only times I've released anything that I remember where I've had any concerns about them being cut or rejected. Otherwise, it's just kind of just um, yeah, kind of formality.
It's nice to see like 88 Films is still getting some of the ones that had been long cut. They're getting some of those finally uncut and approved now, but
Mm.
it seems like there's still this underlying phobia behind a handful of aren't there still like 10 or 15 films that are still either have to be cut or been banned, something like that. I don't remember the entire list, but there's still some for sure.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think I Spit on Your Grave still not fully cut in the
Yeah.
UK, not fully uncut. Obviously, stuff like Cannibal Holocaust, because of the animal uh, cruelty. Um, and that's yeah, off the top of my head. I don't know if there's others that have just. I mean, there's some that are still technically banned because they just haven't been re-released.
Right.
Which I think is true of some of them. But yeah, off the top of my head, those are the ones. I mean, yeah, Last House on the Left was first came out cut, but then we released it at Arrow, and that was uncut. I don't think that was the first time it was uncut, but yeah.
That, I mean, it's exciting to see stuff like that. I got to speak to one of the gentlemen at Wicked Vision in Germany, and Germany's been through so many changes throughout the decades. There was films that people only saw the German versions of, which erased full plot points and changed things entirely, and they were able to get for like the first major release of films, like I think it was Sallow that they did, that was because of what Sallow is all about. They couldn't put it out for years, and
Mm,
they had to petition and finally got it out. And it's incredibly interesting to see that process. Not even a reverse necessarily, but just see the evolution of the way that we're ingesting art in different parts of the world. And it's also exciting to see physical media still, needing to be an important asset in that, because it's one of the things that has to keep it alive. Of course,
mm,
it's exciting.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
With Vinegar Syndrome, your time here is a little bit short so far, but is there any titles that you are like, man, I hope we can get this, because I'm dying to do this and I've always wanted to work on it. I know you have to have a few.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to show my hand too much, I guess, but just trying to. So I've got my shelf of stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of became my kind of second wave after kind of obsessing about the video nasties was obsessing about kind of obscure slasher films. That was kind of my second wave of kind of horror obsessions that kind of kicked in kind of mid like early 20s, and then kind of after joining Arrow kind of systematically gone for
Right,
all the not on disc kind of slasher movies. So Blood Rage, Mutilator, um, The Slayer, Death Screams, Girls Night Out, Deadly Games, um, some others that are escaping me. So Vinegar Syndrome, one of the hugest ones for me, and I think for a lot of people, is Fatal Games. I think that's one of the big last kind of not on disc ever slashes.
right.
So that's like a huge one on the bucket list. Um, and then yeah, I mean, I guess some of the last kind of great not on disc shot on film slashes for me would probably be, I say great, like fun, very
Right.
entertaining, would be like Iced. Um, which I think that was edited on video but shot on film.
Yep.
That's very fun. That's a good kind of party slasher movie with one of the most ridiculous endings of all time. And it's kind of a more recent discovery for me, but Blood Frenzy,
Ooh.
which is the Hal Freeman part of that kind of sub genre of slasher movies made by porn
Yeah.
people. Um, which is a wonderful area in itself. That was a more of a recent discovery for me, but that that turned out to be a lot of fun. Love love any kind of desert setting. Love the
Yeah.
whole kind of group of kind of troubled individuals kind of going on a sort of a therapeutic trip type thing. Love that angle. Some great gore. Um, yeah, some very choice dialogue. So those are probably two bucket list ones for me off the top of my head.
I
What
always
about what
laugh
about what
when
about yourself?
well, Iced is one of them, and that's what I was going to bring up. Is it's hilarious, every time Vinegar Syndrome teases anything, like in the last 24 hours, we got teases for the mystery titles for Black Friday, and no matter what, you have 30 people out there go, "Oh, this is obviously iced," and let me tell you how. And
Uh,
no matter what,
what were the
yeah,
teasers?
it's
I
probably not.
must have missed those. What were the teasers?
Teases this time are, let me see. Uh, in two different places, they say two more titles, which we're not going to tell you about. Perhaps the craziest of the bunch, the surprise titles, one of which will mark the UHD debut of a major work by one of genre cinema's greatest auteurs, and the other is a criminally underseen gem of early 80s horror. We can basically guarantee that you're not going to be disappointed. That was the first tease. And then the second
Mhm.
one, we often save the weirdest and wildest and most unexpected films as surprises, and this upcoming duo will be no different, including the World 4K UHD debut of a slimy epic from one of the greatest genre filmmakers to ever live, along with another never on disc treasure that will surely satiate those craving squirm inducing carnage.
Interesting.
And somebody out there has already guessed ice based on those.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have got iced from either of those, but yeah, you've got to keep our fingers crossed. I mean, uh, the amount of times I've been asked about Fatal Games over the years,
Right.
and especially kind of in the last year, I still had people asking me, and obviously I've had to just sort of say something non-committal, even though I knew it was coming.
Right.
So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I'm glad that you get to see something like that come to fruition, and it's something that has to be gratifying. After 800 people have asked, you can finally go, okay, now you can shut up until they come up to the next one they're obsessing over.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Then it's sort of what's the next one, but yeah, I think I've had a couple of people message me today already about Fatal Games, saying that this you must have had something to do with this, and I'm like, well, yeah. So um, it's as much for my shelf as it is for everyone else's. So
Right. Well, I mean that's a good thing probably to end this on. Obviously, you got physical media in the back, and you work on a lot of it. But are there other titles from other labels that you collect fairly regularly, or are you somebody that buys all the time?
um, yeah, I do. I've had to kind of curb it recently a bit, just because I'm sort of running out of space.
Aren't we all?
Um, but I'm just glancing at my nearest shelf. I mean, I actually I was very happy with so this is a big rogue choice for me, but I was very happy with this. You can see
Ooh,
that.
yeah,
Just and then improbably, it's the kind of thing I would have loved to put together. In improbably lavish edition of a shot on video Australian slasher, um, which I've only, and actually I did have to buy an Australian DVD a while back, um, but I just have to applaud the bonkersness of this package. I've never thought I would live to see the day that Houseboat Horror would get this kind of deluxe, rigid box release and a little badge somewhere that says banned in Queensland. Um,
and people
yeah,
all
and
over the world clamoring to get their hands on it. That's the big thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, I mentioned the Texas Chainsaw UHD. I've got most of the kind of more recent second sight special editions. Still keep up with. I mean, I buy pretty much all the labels. I still keep up with Arrow's stuff. They're still putting out great stuff. I get, yeah, pretty much most things, but yeah, I've had to sort of curb it a bit recently because I just have to stop myself and be like,
Right.
do I really really need that?
But House of
Um,
Horror definitely needed.
that had to be done. There was no hesitation at all with that one. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what else. Got some synapse over there. Got um, yeah, sort of. I got a random German edition of the Black Christmas remake, the 2006
Mm,
one.
yeah.
Um,
I think that was the first time on Blue in the entire world where it was uncut.
yeah, I, yeah, I think I made the mistake of getting the R-rated cut a long time ago. Um, yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, I buy most stuff, but yeah, I'm having to try and curb my habits a little bit and just kind of yeah.
Well, and it's tough when there's so much competition. I mean, a handful of years ago, obviously, it seems like the labels that were here were very healthy, and most of them still are. But nowadays, we're also getting a handful of new labels, brand new every year, and
Mm,
somehow a lot of them are just like Imprint in Australia. A lot of people forget they started in 2020, and they're
mm.
already up to like spine number 240 or something crazy like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
ridiculous how many of these releases we're getting every single month, and it's a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. It's a lot for people to understand, and try to maintain a healthy pace. But obviously, it's good to support where we can, and good to keep this going because it's, as you alluded to earlier, a lot of these, this is going to be like the Herschel Gordon Lewis set. No one is ever going to be able to top that. No one is ever going to be able to do anything with the people involved with that and put out something that will encompass an entire oeuvre of work for Herschel Gordon Lewis in that way again. But the big thing is a lot of those people aren't around anymore or won't be around
Mm.
anymore. So those special
Yeah, I
features,
mean,
especially the ones that you're producing, are some of the most important parts of all this.
yeah. I'm looking at my shelf in the back there. I'm just remembering the top shelf is Severin. That was a big omission I made. I pick up a lot of Severin stuff as well. Um, but yeah, and that is a very very real thing, and we're kind of in you know in a way kind of rushing to document a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
I mean, Herschel Gordon Lewis passed away, I think, just before our box set came out, but we had already filmed, a number of interviews with him for the release, and we'd even got him to do a sort of um, a kind of preface to the big kind of coffee table book that we did as part of that set. So he kind of wrote the kind of preface to that. I neglected to mention Steve Thrower's incredible work on compiling H.G. Lewis's kind of filmography for that. But yeah, I think H.G. Lewis. Well, we never got to get a copy. You never got to see the set really, and so I don't know. That would have that was yeah that was sad that he never he contributed to it, but he never actually got to see
Right.
what we'd done in his honor really. And yeah, I mean it's especially now when we're getting into so especially with kind of when we get to sort of 70s films, I mean, people are kind of the people that are still around are few and far between, and
Right.
so there is a real sense of um, trying to document, people's stories and the stories behind these films while we still can, really, and yeah, that's what I see as being a big part of our and my kind of mission is being able to tell these stories and kind of commit them to posterity.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why it's, I think, important to get some of the people behind these special features like yourself involved in sharing what you do and why it's important to capture that. And that's why I try to do what I can on this channel, because
Mm.
the amount of work that goes into some of these extras is tiresome. It takes years. Like, I can't imagine the amount of man hours that went into that Herschel Gordon Lewis box set. Just knowing what has happened for some of these titles recently, that had to have
Mm.
been like years in the making.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm many sleepless nights over that one. Um, but yeah, yeah. No, that was a lot that went into that.
Well, you can tell it's a labor of love, and so has been this. I appreciate your time. This has been an incredible insight into Vinegar Syndrome and Arrow, and you as a person. So I appreciate you volunteering your evening, and hopefully someday soon we could do it again.
Sounds good. I'll be happy to chat more.
Obviously, everybody should check out the October slate from Vinegar Syndrome. Most people probably have already ordered them, knowing what the titles are by the time this goes up. And obviously, the Black Friday sale is going to be a big point for a lot of physical media fans. So your name will be all over a lot of those credits. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
We'll talk soon. Thank you for listening to the Disconnected Podcast. There's one big thing that you could do to help the show, and that is to leave a rating and review on the podcast service of your choice. Thank you.